There is a truth that has been sitting beside you for decades, like a quiet guest no one ever introduced, yet you always felt its breath on your skin, especially in those nights when sleep took too long to arrive and the room felt too large for a single heartbeat. You learned very early to pretend you did not notice it, because the world around you kept saying that speaking of death was a kind of weakness, a dark corner that no one should enter unless absolutely necessary. So you nodded, you smiled, you followed the script and lived as if you were immune, even though somewhere inside, something whispered that this immunity was only a story created to soften the fear that all of us carry hidden behind the ribs. You remember moments when that whisper came closer than you expected, like the day you looked at an old photograph of yourself and felt an ache so sharp it almost took your breath, because you realized that the person smiling back at you had no idea of the storms that were coming, and no idea. That time would pass with a speed that feels almost cruel. And in that moment, you understood something that no one had dared to say out loud. The fact that death does not arrive suddenly. It announces itself in small ways, in the way your reflection changes, in the way your name sounds different, coming from the mouths of others, in the way silence grows inside a house, even when nothing dramatic has happened. Maybe you remember the first time you felt the room grow cold after the phone rang with news. That punched a hole in your chest. Maybe you remember the strange fragility of holding someone else's absence in your hands, realizing that human beings are nothing more than temporary arrangements of memory and breath. And maybe that was the first time you felt the truth forming inside you, not as fear, but as recognition. The recognition that death is not some distant stranger waiting at the end. It is a presence that walks with you, quietly, learning your rhythms, learning your hesitations, learning the texture of your loneliness. People rarely admit this, but you have felt it more than once, that strange moment when you entered a room full of voices and still felt alone. Not because others ignored you, but because something inside you had shifted. You felt the distance between you and the world widening just a little, and you sensed that this distance had something to do with mortality, with the slow understanding that every bond, every memory, every choice is being carved by time and will one day belong to the past. This awareness does not come all at once. It arrives, drop by drop, until you wake up one morning and realize that you have been carrying it for years. There are truths that do not need to be spoken to be real. Truths that sit in the silence between conversations. Truths that reveal themselves when the house finally grows quiet and you have no one left to perform for it. Is in moments like these that the idea of death stops being a topic and becomes a feeling, a presence, a shadow, shaped not by fear, but by honesty, because deep down, you always knew that ignoring it would not make it disappear. You always knew that life itself was gently preparing you to face what comes after the last breath, not through terror, but through familiarity. Think about the way you look at old objects now, a cup, a letter, a photograph, each one carrying the weight of a memory that once felt light. Think about how these memories return at night, uninvited but persistent, showing you pieces of yourself you thought you had forgotten. This too is a kind of conversation with death. Not the violent kind we see in stories, but the subtle kind that makes you pause and ask yourself, when was the last time you truly lived? Not rushed, not performed, not pretended, but lived with presence, with attention, with a heart that dared to feel. Even the uncomfortable things, most people run from these thoughts because they fear that acknowledging the truth will summon it sooner. But you who have lived enough to understand the shape of silence, you know that truth does not harm, it clarifies. And maybe now as you listen, there is a part of you that feels seen in a way you have not felt in years, as if someone has finally opened a window in a room that has been locked for too long, and the air entering is cold but honest. And so this truth sits with you now, not as a threat, but as an invitation, an unexpected guest asking quietly, who have you been? While pretending that this day would never come. What have you lost? While running from the very thing that could have taught you to live more deeply. What parts of yourself have you silenced? What desires have you buried? What tenderness have you withheld? Because you thought there would always be more time. If this touches something inside you, if you feel that small tremor of recognition in your chest, I invite you to share your thoughts in the comments and let your voice be heard. And if these words speak to a part of you that has long waited for honesty, do consider subscribing so that this space can continue to exist for you and for others who silently carry the same truths you carry. There comes a moment in life that almost no one notices while it is happening. A quiet crossing, a subtle shift inside the chest that marks the beginning of a slow disappearance, and it does not announce itself with drama or pain. It slips in gently like a shadow stretching across the floor. At the end of the afternoon, you do not realize that something essential is leaving you. Because on the surface, everything looks normal. The house is the same. The routine is the same. Your name is the same. But something small and silent begins to fade. And only much later do you understand that this was the moment when you started to die before the body ever showed a single sign of age. It often begins with the feeling that the house around you has grown larger, not because it changed, but because you did the voices that once filled the rooms drift away slowly until they become echoes. The laughter that used to brighten the kitchen becomes a memory that appears only in brief flashes, and suddenly you realize that the walls know more about your loneliness than any human being ever will. There is a strange weight that falls over objects, a cup left on the table, a jacket hanging on a chair. Things that used to blend into the rhythm of the day now stare back at you like quiet witnesses of your absence. Maybe you remember the first morning when you woke up and felt like you were moving through a fog, as if you were present but not entirely here. You brushed your teeth, you made your coffee, you left the lights on out of habit, but the world around you felt slightly out of focus, not enough to alarm you, but enough to unsettle you. This small detachment is often the earliest sign of the invisible dying, not the dying of the flesh, but the dying of presence, the slow erosion of being seen, heard, felt, understood. This kind of vanishing is not dramatic. It is not a collapse. It is more like a dimming of the soul. You start noticing that conversations become shorter, not because people dislike you, but because you stop offering pieces of yourself. Your thoughts grow quieter. Your desires grow softer. Your dreams become something you observe from a distance rather than chase. And life begins to feel like a hallway you walk through instead of a home you inhabit. There are subtle markers of this internal fading the day you decide to keep a thought to yourself because sharing it feels like too much effort the moment you choose silence over connection, because silence demands nothing from you. The afternoon when you look into the mirror and for a split second do not recognize the person staring back, not because of wrinkles or age, but because you sense that the spark behind the eyes has shifted into something softer, something almost resigned. You might recall times when you walked into a room full of familiar faces, yet felt strangely invisible. People greeted you with warmth. They smiled. They spoke to you. Yet something inside whispered that you were no longer part of the same rhythm. You felt like a ghost, gently brushing past lives that continued without you. This sensation does not mean you are unloved. It means you have begun to step into a deeper solitude, a solitude that life eventually demands from everyone. There are memories that resurface unexpectedly, memories that once carried laughter, but now carry silence, like the memory of closing the door after your children left for their own lives, or the memory of watching someone you cared for walk away, knowing they would never return. In the same form, these moments carve small openings in your chest, and through these openings, the quiet of life slowly enters, not to hurt you, but to prepare you for the truth that you are becoming a different version of yourself. Some people try to resist this fading by filling their days with noise, by turning on the TV just to drown out their own thoughts, by scrolling endlessly through screens to avoid the sensation of sinking into themselves. But eventually the noise stops working. The distraction loses its power, and you are left alone with the realization that invisibility is not something others cast upon you. It is something that quietly grows inside when your soul begins to retreat from the world. This retreat, however, is not a failure. It is not a sign of weakness. It is part of the intricate and mysterious process of being human, a process in which life slowly teaches you to pay attention to what remains when everything else is stripped away. This early dying is not a punishment. It is an initiation, an invitation to see yourself without the layers of urgency, expectation, and performance that once defined you. And in this quiet place, something unexpected happens. You begin to feel the weight of your own existence in a way that is both frightening and intimate. You notice the small tremble in your fingers when you hold a photograph from decades ago. You feel the ache behind your eyes when you recall a name you have not spoken in years. And you understand that this soft disappearance is not the end, but the start of a deeper awareness, a slow awakening to the truth that life has always been leading you toward. If any part of this reflection resonates with your own experience, if you recognize these quiet shifts in yourself, I invite you to share your thoughts in the comments. Your voice has a place here. And if you feel that these words speak to something inside you, consider subscribing so that you can continue walking through these truths with a community that understands the weight and the beauty of moments like these. Simone Weil once said that real suffering is not something you escape. It is something you pass through with your eyes open, as if pain were a window rather than a wall. And when you hear this for the first time, it almost feels offensive, because we are taught to avoid discomfort, to cover it, to silence it, to deny it. But Simone believed in something far more unsettling, that pain, when faced directly, becomes a form of knowledge, an intelligence of the soul that does not speak in words but in revelations that arrive when you least expect them. There is a particular kind of suffering that you have felt, the kind that does not scream, the kind that does not break the body but fractures the inner world slowly, like porcelain cracking from the inside. This is the suffering Simone Weil understood with frightening clarity. She believed that attention is the purest form of love, and that suffering is what forces attention to sharpen until you see yourself without the lies you once used for comfort. Think back to the moments in your life when pain pulled you into a silence so deep that the world outside became distant. Those moments were not emptiness, they were mirrors. Perhaps you remember the day you lost someone who shaped your life, not necessarily through death, but through distance, a separation, a disappointment, a betrayal you never fully processed. And in that moment, the world did something strange. It kept moving, as if nothing had changed, while inside you, everything had shifted, and there was a feeling of being buried alive, not under earth, but under the weight of unspoken emotions. Simone Weil would call this gravity, the natural pull of suffering that drags the soul downward, not to destroy it, but to strip it. There are times when you felt this stripping in simple moments, the quiet after an argument, the silence of a room that once held laughter, the sudden realization that someone who once knew every corner of your heart no longer knows how to speak to you at all in those moments. It is not the event that hurts, but the clarity that follows. The clarity that things are not what you thought they were, that the ground beneath you is thinner than you imagined, that love, no matter how fiercely given, cannot shield you from the edges of existence. Simone Weil experienced her own life as a series of inner earthquakes. She chose to work in factories. Even though she was a philosopher, she chose to stand with laborers because she believed that truth lives where comfort dies. She endured chronic pain, hunger, and loneliness, not because she glorified suffering, but because she believed that attention cleans the soul, the way fire cleans metal, leaving behind only what is real and uncorrupted. It is a terrifying idea, because it means that the moments you have tried hardest to forget may be the very moments that shaped your deepest wisdom. Think of the nights when grief refused to let you sleep, when thoughts circled your mind like a storm, and you felt your chest tightening as if trying to hold on to the pieces of a world that was already collapsing. In those moments, you were not simply hurting. You were learning. You were being forced to see what you had been, too busy, too distracted, too afraid to see before the sharpest truths come wrapped in pain, because it is the only language strong enough to break the illusions we cling to. There is a particular kind of suffering that comes with aging too, a suffering that is soft but persistent, the suffering of realizing that some of your dreams no longer fit the timeline you once imagined, or that certain roads will remain forever untraveled. You feel the weight of what you can no longer become, and the quiet ache of what you once were. This is not despair. It is a form of awakening. Simone Weil believed that the soul becomes transparent when faced with loss, transparent enough to see its own architecture, the fragile beams, the hidden cracks, the unexpected strength. You may have noticed this in your own life, the way certain pains soften you instead of hardening you, the way heartbreak deepens your compassion, the way loneliness sharpens your ability to see others who suffer silently. the way failure forces you to meet yourself without excuses. These transformations are not accidents. They are the fruits of conscious suffering, suffering that does not drown you but reveals you. And, perhaps somewhere inside you, there is a memory resurfacing. Now a moment when you broke in, a way no one saw, a moment when you sat on the edge of your own life, wondering how to continue, and without knowing why you did continue, you got up, you breathed, you moved. And through that single silent act, something in you shifted the version of yourself that emerged. After that moment was not the same as the one who entered it. Suffering did not destroy you, it carved you. If these reflections remind you of moments you have lived, of truths you rarely speak aloud, I invite you to share your thoughts in the comments. Your story matters more than you think. And if you want to continue exploring these deeper layers of existence, I gently ask you to subscribe. Your presence here sustains the space where conversations like this can keep unfolding. There comes a point in life when the body begins to speak a language that the soul does not agree with, a slow, quiet language made of stiffness and aches and mournings that require more time to begin, the kind of language that reminds you that flesh is temporary, even when your inner world still pulses with a force that feels unchanged. And maybe you have felt this contradiction rising inside you, like two selves living in the same skin, one moving slower, one still burning with a fire that refuses to dim. It happens in the small moments. First, the day you climb a set of stairs and notice your breath arriving a little later than it used to, or the moment you bend down to pick something up and feel a tightness in your joints that makes you pause, not because of pain, but because of recognition. The recognition that the body keeps time even when the heart does not. And there is something both heartbreaking and strangely beautiful about this split, as if life were reminding you that you are more than the vessel you carry. You might remember how your body once felt like an ally, how movement was effortless, how you could run without thinking, how laughter came easily from the belly, how sleep wrapped you in seconds without restless thoughts leaking into the night. And yet somewhere along the path, the body changed quietly, gradually, like a curtain slowly closing on a stage, while the actor behind it continues to perform as if still seen. This is the strange grief of aging, the grief of realizing that your body no longer mirrors the person you feel yourself to be inside. But the soul, that inner fire that refuses to age, keeps calling out for recognition, calling out to be acknowledged, calling out, not to be mistaken for the weight of years you carry on your shoulders. Perhaps you feel it during conversations with younger people who see only your wrinkles and not your story, or in moments when you walk past a mirror and for a brief second catch a glimpse of the person you used to be, shining through the reflection like a pulse from another time. There is an inner youth that does not vanish with age, a youth made of memory, desire, sensitivity, curiosity, and that youth does not accept confinement easily. It pushes against the limits of the body. It insists on being felt and heard. It wants to dance even when the knees complain. It wants to dream even when the world tells you to settle. It wants to reach for things that are no longer within physical grasp, because the soul does not measure distance the way the body does. And maybe you have noticed that as your body slows, your awareness sharpens in ways you never expected. Colors seem deeper. Silence feels thicker, small. Details in nature touch you in ways they never did before. The sound of wind, the texture of light on the wall, the faint rhythm of someone breathing beside you. These simple things begin to carry an almost unbearable beauty, as if the soul sees more clearly when the body begins to fade. Simone Weil believed that the soul reveals its true shape when the outer layers weaken. She wrote that attention becomes purer when the body no longer distracts us with illusions of endless time. And maybe that is why certain memories return with newfound intensity. Memories of love that shaped you, memories of choices that changed you, memories of words you wish you had said and words you wish you never had. These memories do not come back to haunt you. They come back to ask you who you are beneath the years, who you have always been when no one was looking. There are stories your body carries that the world will never know. Scars both visible and invisible. Small marks of battles you fought alone, and there is a quiet pride in acknowledging them, even if no one else sees them. Maybe you remember the weight of holding someone you loved as they cried, Maybe you recall the exhaustion of working long nights just to keep your family afloat. Maybe you think of the promises you kept, even when breaking them would have made your life easier. These experiences forged a strength the body cannot display, but the soul carries like a banner. And there is something profoundly moving in knowing that age brings a kind of truth, that youth cannot bear the truth, that fragility is not weakness, but intimacy with the human condition. The truth that the soul does not grow old. The truth that being seen is not about appearance, but about presence. The truth that your body can wrinkle and bend while your inner world remains vast, radiant, and fiercely alive. So when you feel your hands trembling slightly, when you stand too long, or when you wake in the middle of the night with your heart remembering a version of yourself that still feels alive inside, it is not a sign of fading. It is a sign of expansion, a sign that you are becoming more transparent to your own spirit, more attuned to its voice, more willing to sit with its truths without fear. If something in these words touches a part of you that has long been waiting to be acknowledged, I invite you to leave a comment and share a piece of your story. Your experience may resonate more deeply than you imagine. And if you have found meaning in this reflection, I welcome you to subscribe so that we can continue walking through these inner landscapes together in a space where your presence truly matters. There is an error so subtle that most people carry it for half a lifetime without ever realizing it. An error that does not shout or warn, but settles quietly into the routines of everyday life until one day it becomes the architecture of who you are. The mistake of surviving your own life instead of living it. And perhaps no one ever told you that this mistake begins in the smallest choices, the ones that seem harmless, the ones you never question. It starts when you silence a desire because it feels inconvenient or unrealistic, when you postpone something important, because there will always be time later when you choose what is expected over what is true, because you fear disappointing others or exposing a tenderness you are not ready to reveal little by little. The soul bends not out of weakness, but out of adaptation, trying to fit itself into a life designed more for safety than for depth, and you do not notice how this shapes you until you wake up years later feeling like a stranger inside your own days. Maybe you remember a version of yourself that felt brave in ways you barely recognize now. The you who once wanted to learn a new language or travel to a place that frightened you. The you who wanted to create something from nothing, or confess a love you carried silently, or forgive someone who hurt you. But instead, you waited, and waiting turned into habit, and habit turned into a slow narrowing of your existence until comfort disguised itself as contentment. Surviving is seductive. It gives you the illusion of control. You follow the same paths every day. You perform the same gestures. You build a life of predictability, and you call it stability. But deep inside your chest, there is a subtle ache, a quiet reminder that stability without meaning becomes stagnation. The heart knows when it is underused. It knows when it is shrinking. It knows when the life you are living is smaller than the life you once imagined. There is a strange sorrow that comes from doing everything right, yet feeling something missing, an unspoken grief that sits between your ribs, a grief born not from what happened, but from what never happened. The dreams untouched, the parts of yourself never expressed, the tenderness withheld from fear of vulnerability, the moments you wanted to speak, but stayed silent because silence felt safer. This is the kind of sorrow that grows heavy as the years pass, because time makes the cost visible. Simone Weil understood this cost in a way that most thinkers avoid. She believed that the worst kind of emptiness is not created by suffering, but by the absence of purpose, by the loss of direction, by the slow erosion of the soul when it stops paying attention to its own hunger. She wrote that the most dangerous form of illusion is the belief that life will always give you another chance to begin again. And maybe you have felt this illusion breaking inside. You like glass, realizing that there are things you can no longer postpone without losing them forever. Think about the promises you once made to yourself, the ones you never fulfilled. Not because you lacked courage, but because you thought tomorrow was endless. Think of the book you wanted to write, the conversation you promised to have, the apology you planned to make, the place you wanted to visit, the version of yourself you imagined would one day emerge, strong, confident, unafraid, and now you stand on The other side of decades realizing that these unfinished pieces of you still whisper from the corners of your life. Sometimes, the universe gives subtle warnings, moments when you feel a sudden surge of emotion for no clear reason. Moments when you wake up with the sensation that time is moving faster than it used to. Moments when you look at your hands and realize they are not the same hands that once held your childhood dreams. These moments are not tragedies. They are invitations. They are questions. Asking quietly, is this how you wanted to live, or did you simply forget to choose? This error of surviving, rather than living, is not your fault. It is the inheritance of a world that trains us to function instead of feel, to endure, instead of expand, to keep moving, even when our spirit begs us to stop and pay attention. But the truth is that surviving takes more from you than living ever will, because living demands honesty, and surviving demands silence. Surviving requires shrinking. Living requires presence. Surviving is what you do when you are afraid to lose control. Living is what you do when you finally understand that control was the cage all along. And yet, despite everything, despite the years, despite the detours, despite the dreams you fear might be too late, there is still a place inside you that remains untouched. A small, fierce part of you that has never stopped wanting more. A part of you that still aches to feel alive, to speak your truth, to love with the intensity you once believed you were capable of, to reclaim the pieces of yourself you abandoned along the way. If any of these words resonate with the corners of your soul, if they awaken memories or emotions you rarely allow yourself to revisit, I would be grateful if you shared your thoughts in the comments. Your perspective adds depth to this space. And if you feel that this reflection speaks to something essential inside you, I invite you to subscribe so that we can continue exploring these quiet truths together with honesty and tenderness. There is a silence that descends upon a human life long before anyone speaks of faith or belief. A silence that feels heavy and intimate, as if something immense were watching you from behind a closed curtain and refusing to answer. And perhaps you have felt this silence during nights when your thoughts would not rest, when you asked for clarity but received only more questions, when you looked for a sign and found only the quiet pulse of your own breath echoing in the dark. This silence feels personal, almost like abandonment, yet it is one of the deepest mysteries of existence. And Simone Weil spent her life trying to understand it. For her, the silence of what lies beyond was not a punishment. It was a form of attention, a force that draws nearby, withdrawing like a teacher who steps back to see if the student has learned to stand on their own. She believed that the silence that frightens us is often the same silence that shapes us, because it forces us to confront the truth of who we are, without distractions, without illusions, without a voice to lean on. And maybe you have felt this too, that the moments when you felt most alone were also the moments when something inside you sharpened enough to truly see. This quiet presence that does not speak often reveals itself during loss, when someone you love leaves this world or leaves your life, and suddenly the air around you becomes unbearably still. You search for answers, you search for meaning, you search for anything that can hold your heart together, but the world offers only silence, and in that silence your pain expands until it feels larger than your chest. Simone Weil believed that this expansion is not a collapse, but a doorway, a space where the soul stretches to meet a truth it could not approach when life was full of noise. Think about the times when you whispered questions into the dark. Why did this happen? Why now? Why them? Why me? And nothing responded. Not a sign, not a whisper, not a feeling of comfort, just the quiet weight of your own voice fading into the room. This experience is more universal than people admit. And yet when you speak of it, you feel vulnerable, as if confessing that you once begged for an answer that never came. But this vulnerability is precisely what Simone Weil understood. She believed that the silence you encounter in moments of suffering is not absence. It is a test of attention, a call to refine your inner listening until you can hear something beyond words. There is a moment in every life when silence becomes almost unbearable, like a mirror reflecting everything you tried to avoid, facing your wounds, your regrets, your fears, your unfinished chapters. And it is in these moments that many people turn away. They fill their days with noise. They surround themselves with distractions. They chase anything that keeps them from meeting themselves. But you who have lived long enough to recognize the shape of silence, you know that running does not protect you. It only postpones the encounter. Simone Weil wrote that real presence can only be felt in the vacuum left when every other comfort is removed. And perhaps this explains why the silence around you sometimes feels sharper with age, because you have lost more, you have endured more, you have seen the world take things from you that you never imagined losing. And in those losses, the quiet becomes deeper, more honest, more demanding. It asks you to stop pretending. It asks you to stop hiding. It asks you to stand still long enough to feel the truth rising from a place inside you that you do not always visit. There are stories you carry silently, stories of nights when you cried without making a sound, stories of prayers spoken not with words, but with trembling hands, stories of wanting to be held by something larger than life itself and receiving only emptiness in return. Yet that emptiness did not break you, it shaped you. It carved a space where new understanding could grow. And maybe now, with the years that have passed, you can see that you are not the same person who once begged for answers. You have become someone capable of holding silence without drowning in it. One of the strangest things about this quiet is that it often deepens right before a major change happens, as if life withdraws its voice to create space for something new, something you cannot yet see, something that requires the stillness that you once feared. Maybe you have experienced this. A strange calm before a decision, a whisper of clarity hidden inside discomfort. A sense that the silence itself is guiding you, not with words, but with openings, with endings, with subtle nudges that rearrange your inner landscape. And here is a truth you may not have allowed yourself to speak aloud. The silence that once frightened you has also saved you. It has carried you through nights when no living voice could comfort you. It has forced you to grow into someone wiser, more patient, more aware of the delicate threads that hold your life together. It has shown you that strength does not always roar. Sometimes, strength is simply the ability to sit with the unanswered and remain open. If these reflections touch a place in you that you usually keep hidden, I invite you to share a thought in the comments. Your presence here matters more than you think. And if you feel that this conversation speaks to something deep inside you, I welcome you to subscribe so that we can continue exploring these quiet truths together with honesty and tenderness. There is a truth that sits quietly inside every human being, a truth so sharp that most people spend their entire lives refusing to touch it. The truth that you are not afraid of death. You are afraid of reaching the end and realizing that you have not lived enough before it. And this realization does not arrive in a single dramatic moment. It comes slowly, like water seeping under a closed door, until one day you step on the floor and feel the cold truth rising into your bones. You may have felt this truth during an ordinary morning, when you looked at the clock and for no clear reason felt a sudden rush of panic, not because of time passing, but because you sensed time had already passed more quickly than you were prepared to admit. Or maybe it came during a conversation when you heard yourself laughing politely and wondered when your real laughter had disappeared, when the spark that once animated your voice had faded into something rehearsed, something safe, something unalive. People rarely speak about this fear, but it is one of the most intimate fears a person can carry. The fear of having lived a life made of obligations instead of desires, routines instead of passions, quiet compromises instead of honest choices. The fear of having kept yourself small out of caution or guilt or habit, and now realizing too late that no one ever rewarded you for your silence. No one ever gave back the pieces of yourself you muted for the comfort of others. There is a strange heaviness that accompanies this fear, a heaviness that sits right behind the heart, a heaviness that grows each time you think about the version of yourself you abandoned, the version who wanted to paint or travel or forgive or love fiercely, but who faded under the weight of responsibilities you accepted without question. And maybe you tell yourself you did what you had to do, that you made the right sacrifices, that your life turned out the way it was meant to. But still, there is a quiet ache that does not leave. Simone Weil believed that the deepest suffering is not caused by pain, but by the separation between who you are and who you were meant to become. And perhaps you have felt this separation widening with time, a slow drifting apart, a recognition that the younger you might look at your current life and ask softly, when did you stop choosing what made you feel alive? There are memories you carry that still sting, not because they were tragic, but because they were incomplete memories of things you wanted to say, but swallowed memories of moments when you had the chance to act, but froze memories of times when life invited you to step forward, and you stepped back because stepping forward felt dangerous, and stepping back felt familiar. It is painful to admit, but some of the regrets you carry come not from what happened, but from what never happened. The love you did not confess, the adventure you postponed, the forgiveness you withheld, the risks you avoided, the days you lived on repeat, waiting for a permission that never came. These regrets are not failures. They are traces of the life inside you that still longs to surface. And yet here is the part that hurts most. The fear of dying is not the fear of disappearing. It is the fear of leaving behind a version of your story that does not reflect the truth of your soul. The fear that the world will never know the depth you held, the tenderness you carried, the beauty you never allowed yourself to offer. The fear that you have lived more like a witness to your own existence than a participant. You may have felt this when watching someone younger, choosing boldly in ways you no longer dare, or when hearing a song you once loved and feeling an old longing tremble inside you, or when seeing a photograph from decades ago and realizing that the person smiling back at you still exists within you, but has been waiting far too long to be acknowledged. And perhaps the most frightening realization is that you have grown used to this fear. You carry it quietly through your days like a companion. You never invited, but learned to tolerate until it became part of your posture, part of your breath, part of the way you move through the world. But something inside you still resists this resignation, something small and stubborn that refuses to be extinguished no matter how many years pass. There is a part of you that still wants to live fully even now, especially now, a part that wants to speak honestly, to feel deeply, to choose boldly, to reclaim the pieces of your life that you thought you had lost to time. This part of you is not naive or childish. It is the most authentic part of your soul, the part that knows what matters, the part that understands that a single moment lived with truth can redeem decades lived in hesitation. If these words stir something inside you, if they awaken memories or longings you rarely allow yourself to feel, share your voice in the comments. Your reflection might touch someone who needs it today. And if you wish to keep exploring these hidden corners of the soul, I invite you to subscribe. Your presence helps this space continue breathing with honesty and depth. There comes a moment in every life so small and quiet that most people step over it without even noticing. Yet, it is in this moment that everything can change. Not because the world shifts, but because something inside you does. Maybe it begins with a single breath taken more intentionally than usual, or with a thought that rises from a place deeper than memory. A thought that whispers, you cannot continue living the way you have been living. And even though nothing dramatic happens on the outside, something monumental begins to move within you. This moment often appears after long periods of inner exhaustion, when you are tired, not in the body, but in the soul. Tired of carrying the same fears, tired of repeating the same patterns, tired of shrinking your voice, tired of pretending you do not want more from your own life. You sit alone, maybe at the edge of your bed, maybe in the kitchen, late at night, maybe in your car, parked outside a supermarket, and suddenly you feel an almost invisible shift, a sharpening of attention, a quiet refusal to continue numbing yourself. And it is in this fragile instant that change is born. Simone Weil believed that transformation begins with a single act of attention. Not action, but attention, because attention reveals what is real. And once you see what is real, you can never fully return to the life you lived before. Perhaps you have felt this too. The moment when a truth you have avoided suddenly stands in front of you and refuses to move. A truth about your relationships, your choices, your aging, your loneliness, your unlived dreams. It does not shout. It simply waits for you to acknowledge it. This acknowledgement is the turning point, the tiny pivot that redirects the trajectory of an entire life. You do not need to make a drastic decision. You do not need to announce anything to anyone. You only need to stop lying to yourself about what you feel and what you want and what you can no longer endure once you speak this truth. Even silently, the world inside you widens, and the first breath of a new life enters you, like cold air entering a sealed room. Think about the moments in your past when something changed inside you without warning. Perhaps you finally accepted that a relationship you defended for years was not love. Perhaps you realized that the dream you postponed for decades was still waiting patiently for you. Perhaps you understood that the grief you carried was not a weight to escape, but a map guiding you to a deeper understanding of what it means to be human. These moments did not happen in storms. They happened in stillness, quiet revelations that rearranged your inner landscape. The human heart does not need dramatic events to transform. It needs permission. Permission to feel what it truly feels, to release what has been held too tightly, to admit what has been denied for far too long. And sometimes this permission arrives not from another person, but from within a single whispered yes to yourself. A yes that feels both terrifying and liberating. Because once you say it, you cannot pretend to be asleep inside your own life anymore. There is a beautiful paradox in this kind of internal shift. It often begins with something very small, a decision to stop arguing with reality, a decision to no longer pretend you are fine, a decision to honor your pain instead of concealing it, a decision to speak honestly with someone you love, even if your voice trembles, a decision to stop running from silence and instead sit inside it until it reveals what you have been too frightened to face. These small decisions create an opening, and through that opening, your soul begins to breathe again. You may have already felt moments like this without fully understanding their significance. The split second when you looked in the mirror and saw not just age, but resilience. The quiet evening when you felt an urge to write or paint or sing, even though you had not done so in years. The unexpected memory that surfaced while washing dishes, reminding you of who you once were and who you still might become. These moments are not random. They are invitations. Invitations that life offers only to those who have suffered enough to pay attention. And perhaps the most powerful part of this turning point is that it does not erase your past. It redeems it. Everything you have lived, your mistakes, your losses, your disappointments, your fears, begin to rearrange themselves into a kind of inner ground, a foundation that holds you with more compassion than you ever gave yourself before you begin to see that nothing was wasted. Not the years you felt invisible, not the years you felt lost, not the years you survived when you wanted to live. These years become material, soft clay that your soul uses to rebuild you from the inside out. This is the moment when you finally understand that your life is not over. Even if some chapters have closed, this is the moment when a quiet courage rises. Inside you, a courage you did not know. You had a courage that does not roar, but whispers gently, try again, live again, feel again, open again, trust again, breathe again. Because you are still here, and being here is enough to begin. If these reflections resonated with any part of your inner world, I encourage you to leave a comment and share what moved you. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today, and if you feel at home in this space, I warmly invite you to subscribe so that we can continue exploring these inner awakenings with honesty, tenderness, and depth. There comes a moment at the end of every inner journey when words no longer know what to do, and silence becomes the only language capable of holding the weight of everything you have lived, everything you have lost, everything you have remembered, and everything you have dared to feel along the way. And this moment is not dramatic. It does not arrive with triumph or revelation. It comes gently, like evening light filling a quiet room with a softness that asks nothing from you except presence. In this final space, you begin to understand something that perhaps you have always known, but never allowed yourself to fully accept, that the deepest truths of your life were never meant to be shouted. They were meant to be held the way one holds a fragile object, with both hands, with tenderness, with humility, with a kind of reverence that comes only when you realize how easily a human heart can break, and how miraculous it is that it still continues to love. And maybe now, as you reflect on everything that has been said, something inside you feels a settling, a slow, unclenching, a loosening. In the places where your grief once hardened into silence, you begin to see that every sorrow you carried was not a punishment, but a path toward a greater honesty, a greater attention, a greater intimacy with your own soul. Simone Weil believed that true understanding arrives only when the ego grows quiet and the heart becomes willing to kneel before reality without defense, without demand, without expectation. And maybe that is what you feel now, a quiet surrender, not of defeat, but of acceptance. There is a kind of peace that does not remove the pain, but makes space for it. A peace that says you do not need to fight every memory. You do not need to justify every choice. You do not need to fear every silence. You are allowed to simply exist exactly as you are, without performance, without apology, without trying to outrun the truth that has been following you for years. The truth that everything you have lived has shaped you into someone profoundly human, profoundly tender, profoundly aware. And in this awareness, there is a soft gratitude rising, a gratitude for the things you once hated, enduring, a gratitude for the nights you thought would break you, a gratitude for the losses that carved openings in your soul, large enough for new light to enter, a gratitude for the people who left, because their absence taught you how to stand alone, gratitude for the people who stayed, because their presence reminded you that love can survive even the hardest winters. You might find yourself remembering small details now, the way someone once held your hand during a difficult moment, the scent of a place you loved, the melody of a song that carried you through heartbreak, the quiet wisdom of someone older who said something simple that suddenly made sense. Decades later, these memories do not come to haunt you. They come to honor you. They come to show you that your life has been made of moments fragile and fleeting. Yes, but luminous in ways you did not always recognize. And now, at the closing of this reflection, there is no need for anything grand, no need for promises or declarations or resolutions. What remains is something much more intimate, a simple breath, a quiet stillness, a gentle recognition that you are alive in this moment, alive with every story you have carried, alive with every truth you have unlocked, alive with every wound that finally found air after being hidden for years. This ending is not really an ending. It is a soft invitation, an open door, a whisper that says, you may rest now, you may breathe now, you may allow your heart to expand without fear. You may trust that the life ahead of you still holds beauty, even in the shadows, still holds meaning, even in the uncertainty, still holds tenderness, even in the silence. And before this moment dissolves, I want to thank you. Thank you for allowing these words to travel into the most private corners of your heart. Thank you for your attention, your vulnerability, your willingness to walk through truths that many avoid. Thank you for staying until the end, because staying says something about you, about your depth, about your courage, about your hunger for understanding. If this journey touched something inside you, I would be honored if you left a comment sharing even a small piece of what you felt. Your voice matters deeply here. And if you wish to continue walking through reflections like this, I warmly invite you to subscribe so you never lose this space where your soul is allowed to breathe. And now, as we close this chapter, gently, slowly, without rushing, I invite you to click on the next video that will appear on your screen. Let it hold you. Let it guide you. Let it deepen the quiet awakening that has begun inside you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for staying. Thank you for feeling. Remember, your presence is a light, even when you cannot see it yourself.